Hello, everyone. This is Dave Menapace with episode 7 of the Hassle Free RE podcast. And today we are going to be talking about a not so hassle free set of topics that relate to short term rentals. So today I am joined here by Kim Menapace. So, Kim is my life partner, my business partner, my babysitter, mother of our kids. Pretty much anything that you see here is because of her in a good way. So before we get going too much and really dive into the topics that we're going to talk about today, Kim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kim Menapace. I do not do real estate full time like Dave does as my profession. So I have a regular 9 to 5 working in product strategy at carters.com. So my background is in business, and I also did a master's degree in user experience. And that is basically trying to design products and services that people are willing to pay for. It's blending art, science, and business all into one and creating awesome products. So that's why I like applying that stuff to things outside of my 9 to 5 job, like our Airbnbs and other things that Dave is working on.
Perfect. So, Kim was nice enough to spend some of her time on this podcast today. And the topic, or I should say, set of topics that we want to cover today are really when things go wrong. We call them the oh shit moments in the short-term rental industry. And not only that, we wanted to share some of the good, bad, and the ugly of owning a short-term rental, but also offer some suggestions for how to overcome those challenges. So hopefully they're a little easier for you than they were for Kim or I. So the way we're going to do this is Kim and I are going to each share some of our own stories, and we're going to sort of do a Q&A to each other, and we'll finish up with some of our funny moments. So with that, for the next 30 to 60 minutes or so, why don't you hang tight? And without further ado, Kim, what is the number one question that you get as it relates to running a short-term rental?
Yeah, I think when people first hear that I own an Airbnb with my husband or two now, they say, how hard is it really? Is it really passive income? And the answer is no. It's definitely not the case, at least for us, especially when we're trying to stabilize our second Airbnb. So I think that another question people ask is, what if your cleaner doesn't show up? What if a toilet breaks in the middle of the night? How hard is it to handle that? And I think that those things absolutely happen. And when you finally have it happen, you feel like your biggest fear is now happened and occurred, and you've survived, and now you have to learn how to deal with it. So we've had to do that a number of times.
What I was going to say is, why don't you tell us about, has a cleaner ever not shown up?
Yes, more than once, unfortunately.
So why don't you talk to us maybe about the first, second, or the third time that that's happened?
Yeah.
And how you got through it.
Absolutely. So back years and years ago in my professional career, we had a training about customer service, and I basically applied that to how we deal with our problems in our short-term rental. So the first thing I do is I empathize with the guests that are having that issue. So you really want to feel their pain and express that to them, and you can do that in a way without accepting or shifting blame onto someone else. So for example, if the cleaner doesn't show up, I was out to dinner with our family and got a phone call that the cleaner didn't show up, and they kind of discovered problems throughout the house for a while, and then called and said, I didn't think they came at all. So you say, I am so sorry. You seem upset, rightfully so. I'd be so upset if I showed up at an Airbnb and it wasn't cleaned at all or to my satisfaction. So that's the first step, is really expressing that empathy, and you understand and feel their pain with them. The next step is asking the guest what would make it right for them. Every person is going to have a different take on what would make it right for make them feel better about that situation. A guest might say, I want another cleaning company to come and spend a couple hours cleaning it. I'll get out of the house so you can do that. Someone else might want a refund. So you just never know. So I guess instead of just guessing and saying, here's money back and I'll get someone to pay, come and clean, they might not want someone in their space now that they've settled in for the week for their beach vacation. So I think that's the second step that I would recommend, is then figuring out what's going to make it right for that particular person and situation. And then lastly is kind of the follow-up after you figure out your systems and operations on how to make sure this doesn't happen again. And then with the guest, I tend to try to not review them. If they review us first and knock us, rightfully so, for something that was in control or are not in our control, you appropriately respond in a professional, empathetic manner publicly on Airbnb. But we try to just not make rock the boat and make the situation any worse, and just kind of let the guest hopefully recover and have an awesome vacation for the rest of their stay, and then learn from that experience and apply that learning to how we run our business.
What is there anything that you can do to at least try and prevent a cleaner not showing up?
Yes, I would say we try to have frequent communication, especially when we first start out with a new cleaning company. Admittedly, we're on our third cleaning company in 4 years at our Cape House. So I think frequent communication and setting up systems. So whether it's texting, emailing, both the schedule as it stands when you take them on, and then also new bookings. How do you want to handle that? How far away of a time frame do you need us to get pre-approval before we accept the booking? If it's 2+ weeks out, some cleaners won't need you to give them a heads up. Others might say, hey, I need you to tell me about anything that's 3 weeks or less, because I need to make sure I staff it appropriately. So I think frequent communication and establishing your systems is critical, and then course correcting as you see problems pop up there. So just be really mindful and keep a pulse on everything, and try to check in with them. Hey, what's working for you? What's not working for you? I think we ask that a lot with our cleaners, and especially our previous 2 cleaning companies, and we didn't get a lot back. I think this third one's been going a lot better in that way, and that we can have those touch points and see how we can continue to steer the ship correctly as we learn and get into our 4th year of doing our Cape Airbnb.
I think those are great points. And if anyone goes back and listens to the first episode of the Hassle-Free RE podcast, where I interviewed Tony Iacobucci, he did this really interesting thing. He had a conversation with his cleaning company where right off the bat, he would say, tell me everything that you hate. And he would frequently check in with him. And I almost think it's more of a red flag if the cleaner's not complaining or telling you what works and what doesn't work. Complaining is not a bad thing. It's somebody communicating. And a short-term rental is a business, right? It's a business in the format of a house. And this is, short-term rentals are really unique in that, yes, it's an investment strategy, but it's the hospitality business. And it's really important that people don't forget that. And so
you hit on a good point in saying this is the hospitality business. I think that you'll get the whole gamut of guest experience on Airbnb. Some people use it really frequently, and some people it's their first time ever using it. And we can see in reviews or comments and questions that if people have different expectations or seemed like they really wanted more of a hotel experience than an Airbnb experience, where you want to live like a local and feel like you're pretending it's your house and you're going to your summer home for a week or 2. We have repeat guests who this is their 4th year going, and I think they feel that sense of ownership and personal touch to that house. And I think that sometimes when we get a bad review like we did recently, you realize that there was a mismatch of the expectations and the service that was delivered. Mm-hmm. And I think remembering the hospitality, we are in the hospitality industry. Some people are comparing you from previous Airbnb stays, and some people are comparing you to a hotel experience. And so you try to catch that mismatch of expectations in the questions and inquiries they send you before they book, but sometimes you don't catch that.
Nice. That'll definitely be a topic we touch on in a few minutes. So you hit on Cape Cod and some of the challenges. We have had cleaners not show up, and it's heartbreaking the first time. By the third time, it's with different companies, you get a little bit resilient to that situation and sort of have your own system for how you handle that. And you do realize that life, a day is still 24 hours. You still sleep at night, and the next day is still going to happen. Want me to hit on Maine?
Yes, Dave, I'll actually turn this around on you and ask, how is our second Airbnb going, Logan's Lodge?
Yeah, well, I'll take a step back and say that every house has its own personality, and that personality is impacted by the market that you're in. It's impacted by the number of guests you can sleep. Those are kind of two of the biggest things.
And the service companies that you partner with up there.
And the service companies. So there's really three things. And so over, I think this is our 4th or 5th season in Cape Cod, we have good systems. The technical aspects of managing our short-term rental in Cape Cod, Sunny Days Cottage, was easily able to be replicated for Maine, but how we approach that house has been a little different. So just sort of some context setting, where Cape Cod is a 2-bedroom house where we sleep 4 people. In Maine, it could sleep anywhere between 9 and 12 people. It's a much larger property. So one thing that has come up a few times, we haven't had any cleaning issues. It's actually been the opposite. We've had really wonderful cleaners there, and we've also had really amazing service people, from plumbers, several handymen, lots of touch points on that house, which is really great. Those are things we can control.
Different OSHA problems up there.
Different OSHA problems of different severities. What we haven't been able to control up there, and really across the country, is the weather that we're having. We're in the middle of an extreme drought. And one thing that we did not have on our radar, I certainly did not have on my radar, is that this house is on a well system.
A private well.
A private well. And it's what's called a shallow well, which from our understanding, 9 or 10 months of the year is no problem. But this summer, with the extreme heat and very little rain, that home has run out of water several times. And because of that, a few things have happened. People will be in the middle of a shower and there won't be water to shower with. They'll go to fill up a water bottle and there won't be water. They go to flush a toilet, it might not flush. And if the water in the hot tub has to be replaced, we might not have enough water to do that, and it'll be out of commission for several weeks, not to mention the impact on running a dishwasher and running laundry. So of course, when this first happened, we were devastated.
I was going to say that word.
It was devastating. It was early July. And to compound that issue, what we learned is that the guests that were staying there did not speak English, and that the VRBO application translated their typing. So I would have had no idea, but everything in our unit, everything in the home is written, and how to use the home is written in English. So we sort of had two issues here. Not an issue, but we had two separate challenges to work through. So anyways, the water was not filling up fast enough in the well. They kept running out. They kept trying to use the water. It kept emptying the well. And it was a challenge. We found out it's Sunday night at 8 p.m. when I'm about to go do a final walkthrough on a home for a prospective buyer, someone that was closing on that condo the next day.
I'm doing bath time with the kids.
Well, Kim is taking care of the kiddos and getting them ready. So these are real challenges. So how did we handle it? I wouldn't say we overcame it, because our solution for this problem won't be implemented until next year. But how did we handle it in the moment? And then as it's happened a few times since then, how did we overcome it? The first thing was, we were incredibly responsive to the guests. They reached out with an issue, and immediately we made ourselves available to help work through and at least get an understanding of what was going on. The next thing we did, and this was us playing defense on the forefront, is that we had two people that were handymen that we knew could at least go look at the well and look at the pump that brings the water from the well to the house and tell us if there was an issue with either of those. And if we really needed, we had an emergency plumber that we could call. All of these people cost money, but if you're 4 hours away from your home, it's good to have these people in your back pocket. So what we did is we had, and I'm just going to sort of go through the technical resolution and then what we've done going forward to help play defense against this. We had the handyman go. He confirmed the water well was low, and that the pump was actually broken that was bringing the water to the house. We had a plumber go up a few hours later. At this point, it's 10 or 11 at night. He communicated with the guests. Turns out he knew the language that they spoke. He communicated with the guests so they could flush the toilets. He gave them a bucket so they could pull water from the hot tub and at least get through that. Luckily, they were checking out the next day. So we had 24 to 48 hours to start to find a resolution. And thankfully, it started to rain and the water started to fill back up in the well. We replaced the pump and we had pretty much gone on forward. It has run out a few times since then. Really, it fills slowly, but how have we gotten through that now? We communicate, I've been communicating 3 to 5 days before a guest's stay, indicating that this has happened, asking them to bring water and several gallons of water, or at least water bottles so people can drink water. And then offering them a refund if they choose that this just isn't going to be the vacation that they hoped for right now until we really get to September when there's more water. Being upfront about that and saying, hey, if you want to cancel and get a full refund, we will make that happen for you. There's actually only been one guest that has asked for that refund. Most of the guests have kind of given a smile and said, okay, this will be a little more like camping than we thought, but you know what? We still want to go. And we actually really haven't had to refund any money other than the guests that canceled one. So I think just being open and honest with the guests, not trying to trick them and get them there and keep their money. With that guest that canceled this weekend, we offered, I let them know when there's availability this winter. If they want to come back and book a stay, of course they would have to pay for it. But that's just an example of how this house in a different market, different size house, different types of guests is going to have a different personality and it's going to have its different challenges. And those are some ways that we were able to handle that and still get sleep. Of course, it's devastating when that happens, just like when a cleaner doesn't show up. But these are solvable problems. I think one of the most important things to realize in anything relating to real estate is that whatever problem you're up against, whether it's short-term rental, long-term rental, flips, anything, somebody else is coming across that problem before you.
And I think you bring up a good point where we try to plan ahead and anticipate what could be a problem and prevent it. You're still going to get blindsided. You're going to get, we knew we had a private well. We weren't aware of this kind of perfect storm of issues. We had decided to service with the hot tub. We had larger parties staying back to back, and then it was just the perfect, we have a really dry summer. Even 4 hours south, our lawn is totally fried this summer. So I think you're going to have unexpected things happen, and you're going to have to handle it with that good customer service with the guest, figuring out the short-term way to remedy the problem, and then long-term. And Dave and I have talked a lot about how do we solve this in a larger capacity? And I said there's really 3 ways that you solve this water problem. First is you address the source. The second is you address the storage of it. You could have the well is totally full and there's plentiful water and it just keeps flowing down our hill, our mountain, and goes to the next house and the next house. And like if we could maximize more storage, we could potentially last longer from these big drought periods. And then it's the usage of it. And we've been tackling that because that's the quicker, easier fix right now, and saying, hey guests, we're in a severe drought. You might want to, if you want to cancel and refund, we'll do that. Bring water for drinking. Please be mindful of longer showers. I think the guests that actually stayed and had the water run out had more than the max number of guests. Dave found shreds of water balloons all over the property. So clearly they had some fun with, there was a lot of kids, I think, there. So they had, used the hose for water balloons. And you just think of all these things that I didn't think to say, please don't use water balloons on our property because you're using the hose a ton, you're leaving shreds of balloons all over the yard, we have to clean up. So you have these funny things that you just don't expect. And I think handling it with the formula of empathy, identifying with the emotion, and then handling the acute problem right now, and making sure you provide that guest with a good experience and how you handle it, hear their concerns, and try to find a solution that works for both of you, whether it's a refund or some other way, shape, form to make it right. And then think strategy wise, which I like a lot, is laying out the different options for the longer term solution. How much does each cost? What is the guarantee of success with those? And that's the step that Dave and I like to, really set aside time for and strategize and think through big picture so that we can not have this be a recurring problem for too long.
There's another one in Maine that I think is a really good story to share because it takes a little bit of a different angle in that it's been really, really hot up there. And so, of course, guests are going to, as we instruct them to do, open windows at night, shut them during the day, let the cold air in, at night, and then you keep it out during the day. We had a scenario where we had guests, 5 or 6 guests that were staying at the house. It was close to 100 degrees up there in Maine. And for those that don't know, usually these homes in northwestern Maine don't have air conditioning because it's typically getting into the 50s at night, even in the dead of summer. It's a lot cooler up there, but it's been an extreme year. And the guests had reported that there were thousands of flies that swarmed into the kitchen and bathroom.
The water sources.
So that could be devastating, right? Like, it's gross for them. For us, we're sitting here wondering, why are there so many bugs in the home? And just to preface this, we do have, did pay to do a preventative pest control company and service come in. So we're really surprised. We've never had a guest bring this to our attention before. What I came to learn, so throughout their stay, I pretty much followed Kim's system where empathized with them, worked to try and get our pest control company out there to take a look at the situation, and just made myself available for that guest. So for the remainder of their stay, I could be their therapist. I could apologize to them. We did not end up giving them any money back because they did not ask for any money back.
They said they had a really awesome stay and they were having a great time.
So outside of that, just having close communication with them was enough to get their positive feedback. We'll get to the reviews in a minute, but what I actually came to learn was that at night, they opened all the doors to the home and they kept the outside floodlights on, which swarmed flies to the lights, and then all those flies came inside. So the whole reason that bugs and flies were in the house in the first place was 100% their fault. It was not the fault of the home itself. How did we approach that, right? When it comes to reviews, and Kim, you touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk about it again. Guests and hosts live and die by those reviews. We didn't even realize this when we first launched, but the review system in Airbnb and VRBO is the most critical component to running your business. The second you get a 4-star review or anything under a 5, it immediately impacts how high you're going to show up when somebody looks for a 2-bedroom house in Dennisport or a 4-bedroom house in Bethel. And where you show up on that list, if you're not on that first page, nobody's going to find you. And positive reviews are the #1 driver, and actually responsiveness to guests when they message you is the second driver. So in that instance, for me, it was more important. That was their one bugaboo. They left the doors open, but they were super nice about the whole fly situation. I knew it wasn't our fault. I also knew it wasn't really my place to blame it on them either. It was very cheap for us. It might have even been free because of our service contract to get a company in there to fix, and our cleaners are already there. They cleaned it all up because a lot of those flies died and they'd be dead on the floor. But that's one of those things that, at the end of the day, I could have gotten upset at those guests, but you know what? It was easier and probably probably the better business decision to brush it under the rug, still give them a 5-star review, appreciate their business, and move on from it. They were happy, we were still happy, and at the end of the day, it was $0. It was no more money out of pocket. But that is an example of, it could have been first really easy to get really anxious over the situation as a homeowner. And then, of course, it could have been really easy to feel very frustrated with the guest because they were kind of blaming it on us and our home. And sometimes as a business owner, you really have to operate at a higher level than that so you can stay focused on your business. If you spend your entire day trying to put out a fire that's already contained and it's going to burn out on its own, it might not be as good as figuring out where the next fire might be started and getting ahead, making sure there's water nearby.
I think you hit on a couple of good points there, that you want to give the benefit of the doubt to your cleaner if they didn't show up. Maybe there's a miscommunication. It was your fault, or they had an emergency. We have had emergencies with our cleaning companies. For the guest, you give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't do something wrong and leave a light on right next to a screen door with some little crevices that a bunch of flies could get in. So you want to give the benefit of the doubt and also hear two sides to every story. I think that's something we've learned about in life and in business, is to ask for that second side, that opinion, before you form your thoughts. And I think that communication is really important. And another really important point you brought up is having that pest control service. It was then we could take the blame, but like the remedy of the situation and say, we have a preventative pest control company. We will have them come over. We pay a monthly service for them to do things just like this. And they come in and help deal with particular instances where there might have been a problem, like a bunch of mosquitoes got in the house, or black flies or whatever. So I think that we've learned that trying to have that neutral third party to either fix the situation or be able to help explain a challenge or problem. We've had rowdy guests that have disturbed neighbors, and that's not good for us on Airbnb. It's not good for guests, and Airbnb as a whole and as a company is very sensitive to that. And actually back in August 2020 had basically come out with a policy saying, we do not allow parties at our properties. You can have it, I think it's more than 16 guests. Even if your place can sleep more, they won't let you actually rent to more than 16 in any house size. And so we basically point to that and say, hey, Airbnb has a policy that you can't have a party. What's a party? Well, really like noise violation and being really loud deep into the night, that's considered a party. And so we've been able to point our finger at that policy and say, hey, sorry, we're hearing complaints from neighbors. Airbnb doesn't allow parties. You could get kicked off the platform. We could get kicked off the platform if this becomes a reoccurring problem. So I think that third party separation really helps in a number of ways. Both we try to use them for preventative control and then also to help remedy situations. And then just in our communication and being able to have that neutral third party involved is really critical for some of our situations we've had to deal with.
Right. And it is interesting. I think, we do a pretty good job at getting out in front of a lot of things that might pop up. And it is important to know that becoming a sort of professional at operating a short-term rental, you're not going to know all the tricks in the book on day one. It's taken us a few years to understand what are going to be the pressure points of a guest and what are going to be the areas that will be the most challenging for us. A lot of things, rather than just always trying to paint this amazing picture on the Airbnb and VRBO listing and not explain any of the nuances of a home, we really try and be honest in there. Our house in Maine is on a steep dirt road. It's fine in the summer. In the winter, it will not be. You might be able to get there with two-wheel drive, but you will want an SUV. Or, for example, in the Cape, we clearly articulate, you have to bring your own towels and sheets, things of that nature.
That's more common in that market, by the way.
Right. So each market has its own thing, but these are the different things that we try and get out in front of. However, not everyone is going to take the time to read that information that you put in front of them, right? And so one thing, it's not necessarily when things go wrong, but it's not uncommon to occasionally get a guest that would prefer to message you about each individual thing rather than reading what you've tried to articulate to them about the home. Whether it's, about getting onto the internet and they realize they typed a number wrong, or, I mean, there can be a million things. Kim, what are some of the ways that we try and look out for that on the front end to avoid those types of situations, or maybe to steer those guests towards another home?
Yeah, I would say that some of the most needy guests we've had have been ones that asked questions before they booked, and not just one. Sometimes people say, are you pet friendly? That's perfectly reasonable. Or is there an extra fee? And that stuff is available on the listing. They can find it. But if they ask ad nauseum questions about everything, you can kind of tell ahead of time that they're going to be needy the whole time. When we were in our first year of running our Airbnb on Cape Cod, we just were so hungry to accept all bookings and because we bought in April and the high season was a couple months later. So we were just needed to get all of the bookings in to get our experience in, get the money made so that it could pay for all the expenses and then some for the rest of the year until the next spring and summer. So we learned from those. And now when we see guests asking a million questions just, you can just tell from that level of communication that they're going to be high maintenance the whole time. And we'll say, hey, I think that our property is not the best fit for you. Good luck in your search for your vacation, and kind of leave it at that. And there's no negative repercussions on Airbnb and VRBO. This is your home that you're renting it. Yes, it's a business for us, but it's very personal as well. And so Airbnb and VRBO want you to be responsive, especially in the first communication. And then after that, they don't care if the guests message you 20 times in a row. And we've had crazy guests, potential guests that have done that. And if you need to go silent because they're being inappropriate, or you already have said your piece that they were not a good fit for your house, Airbnb and VRBO are not negatively giving you repercussions for that at this time, because they do understand if they don't treat the hosts and owners well, they're not going to have inventory for guests to rent. So I'd say that that's how we weed out some of those potential challenging guests ahead of time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And switching gears a little bit, everybody's emotional connection to their own home is a little bit different too. One word of advice that we always like to give people is that, once you decide to rent it out on Airbnb or VRBO, whatever platform you use, remove yourself a little bit from that home. You might have some pretty serious emotional connections to that home, but it's not fair to expect the guest to have those same emotional connections, right? To them, this is their home for 48 hours to 2 to 7 days, usually tops. And they're there to have a good time. They're not there to think about your own personal memories at your home. And if you get really wrapped up into having this sort of personal emotional connection to the home, it can be really challenging to treat the home as a business. And it can be really easy to get wrapped up and not actually enjoy the process of running this wonderful business that you have in front of you.
It's a tough balance. And I think the first 2 years that we stayed at our own Cape House for our vacation, the first 24 hours, 48 hours, I'd be a basket case saying, no, don't go on the couch. I need to put a sheet on it. I don't want it to get stained. Don't do this, don't do that. And it took me a long time to unwind, because it was almost the opposite. I was thinking of it as the business, and I was trying to sink into enjoying it personally as a family. I was much better this year, I think, on that, but it's a tough balance. I do find that people who buy a property off the bat, knowing they're going to use it a little bit for personal and then rent it a lot for the shoulder seasons or the rest of the summer that they're not there, do better than people that we talk to that say, oh, my family's had this house in their family for 10, 20 years. The thought of having strangers now stay in it feels uncomfortable. We, right out the gate, we're saying this is going to be a rental a lot of the time, and we're going to use it for 2 weeks every summer for ourselves. And we basically decorated it that way. we optimize storage, et cetera, that way. And so it was easier. And I do think I think that makes it better if you already go in with that mindset, whereas shifting the purpose of your home can be tougher. And I think for those people who want to do that with family homes, I'd recommend starting from scratch, maybe like empty all the closets and everything out, take all the personal photos out, and then start from scratch again. And it might be easier, but I do see a distinct difference between the different types of people thinking about getting into short-term rentals.
Yeah. There's a couple like smaller oh shit problems that, or like things that have come up that I just think have been kind of interesting that maybe just without any sort of real order jump into, because I do think they're interesting. And before I even do that, I want to touch back on something that you said about getting both the perspective of both sides before forming your own opinion, because one area I have personally struggled in is that I can be quick to form an opinion, and I can also be quick to take the side of the guest or the cleaner, and I'm not always on the right side once I have all the information. So there's been several times where a cleaner who's no longer with us because she didn't show up twice would text us and say the whole house is torn up, this was a terrible guest. And when you ask them to send photos, you come to learn it's not torn up at all. There's actually nothing that is broken.
The bedspread was just not put perfectly back in place, but we're going to clean it anyways.
Or maybe a bed has been moved a few feet, and that can be fine. Maybe something for the guest dropped back there. They went and grabbed it and said, okay, well, we're leaving today anyway, so I'm not going to put the bed back. It takes a cleaner half a second to put that bed back, and there's really no issue. So there's been, and at the same time, there have been guests that maybe make a mess or break something themselves, and they try and overcompensate by blaming the state of the home when they got there. So, one quick story is this only happened once last year on the Cape. A guest called to say that the toilet wasn't flushing and that it was clogged, and then it was like clogged when we got there. And we really knew that more than likely wasn't the case. And at that time, I think people were definitely still sensitive around social distancing and COVID and things of that nature. And so I essentially said, okay, we will call a plumber and have them come down there. If this was caused by you or the guest, like that's an expense I have to put back to you. And within 10 minutes, they called me saying that it was no longer clogged and that it wasn't an issue. So that was a unique way of approaching that situation, because they at that point knew that we're not just going to eat every single expense, but we do have a solution that we can work on together with them. And very quickly it was resolved. So it's not always the way to go about it, but there are ways to carefully and strategically go about it, where that was literally an oh shit moment though.
But they were saying that it was like that when they got there, but it wasn't the case. I don't think I remember this one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not uncommon, I never brought it up with the cleaner even. So to your point, what you were saying earlier is that you do have to just take a big step back. Sometimes when those things happen, maybe wait 5 minutes before you respond. See if another message pops up that says, oh, it's actually not an issue, things like that. So
yeah, I think that you want to be prompt and respond appropriately given the severity of the issue. And I think that true emergencies, guests should call 911 or whatever if there's a fire or something. And then most things have a little bit of leeway with the time. I think water running out, we also responded quickly. We try to be very responsive in general, but you do have to just respond with the appropriate time sensitivity given the issue. So
should we talk about some of our most memorable moments? Are there any other stories?
Those are good, I think. Yeah, we could probably have 8 different podcasts about short-term rental management, but we'll keep it to oh shit problems.
The next 8 weeks. I'm committing you to some more podcasts with us. So why don't you talk, or would you like me to go first?
You go first. What's your either most memorable or funny moment of OSHA challenges with our Airbnbs?
definitely on the Cape at Sunny Days Cottage last year, when 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 we brought our puppy. So let me again take a step back. So at that point in time, our youngest daughter was not yet born. We had our son who was about 2 years old. Yeah, he was about 2. And we have an older Great Dane, who older meaning at that point he was 4. And we had a puppy Great Dane who was 5 months old, who weighed about 100 pounds, I would say. And the home itself is 482 square feet. And it was really wonderful from a space management perspective. Before we had kids, it was fine. It was Kim, myself, and 2 of our Great Danes. And then once you throw another human into that, the space gets really tight, especially when you do have a puppy Great Dane. And the reason this was most memorable is we were by far our worst guests ever. We did much more to that house than almost any other guest that I can ever think of. So a couple things happened that year. We were there for 2 weeks or a week and a half. It rained almost every day. We were completely bound to being inside. And there's just a lot happening when you have a 2-year-old and a puppy dog that's 100 pounds. And so everything from who can pretty much touch the ceiling on his back legs. So everything from ripped window shades to mud being just trampled throughout the house from the puppy, to dirt on a lot of the furniture from the puppy. He was too big for us to actually bring a crate down there. And so we had no real way of containing him. He got into the food and ate about 19 cups of food when he was down
We
there.
tried to put the baby gate up and he destroyed the baby gate that was
Walked
at
right
the
through the
property.
baby
Well, he
gate.
chewed it and destroyed it. He took the toilet paper off the holder and shredded it all over the futon cover.
Just everything. And he actually ripped apart one of the futon covers. So it's, we do allow dogs at our properties because we have dogs. We find it opens us up to a broader pool of guests. And 9 times out of 10, we've had very few issues ever having a pet there, and we charge extra money for it.
And we say no puppies.
And we say, especially after our own puppy. And so how did we overcome that? Because we did have a same day turnaround. We ended up sending the dogs and our son home with our in-laws about 2 days before checkout. And we literally spent 2 days cleaning and it was like we were relaunching.
Yes, it was.
The house.
We were replacing all the broken things, upgrading a couple of little things, but yes, we did our penance.
That was not a vacation. We were really kind of, we were just bound to this small home in the Cape during the rain, and then the 2 nice days were spent cleaning up the whole house. So it's funny. It's one of those, times I'll never forget. And we still allow dogs at that property, but we do not bring our own dogs, especially now that we have 2 kids, and it's a little easier to vacation now because of that.
Yep, and when guests ask, can I bring my Bernese Mountain Dog puppy? We say, no, thank you. This is not the right.
Rent the neighbor's house. How about for you?
This is another one with the Cape House. So the first summer that we were renting it, so we bought it in April 2019. We went and stayed in it ourselves end of June, early July. Our son was born 2 weeks early. And then within, I think less than a week later, a tornado hit Cape Cod. And these are pretty rare. I think that I was researching it for this podcast, and I think there's 3 or 4 recorded tornadoes on Cape Cod and historically. So we had a tornado hit our Cape House within 3 months of owning it, 4 months of owning it. It knocked down a really large tree branch from our neighbor's house, hit our back porch, missed the gigantic glass table, hit a storm window, and knocked our outdoor shower door askew, and Dave had to repair it, but minimal damage, just had this gigantic tree branch covering our entire back porch. And we had just gotten home from the hospital with our son. It's our firstborn child. We have the 2 dogs at home. And we're trying to handle messaging with a guest who's lost power. She, has 3 kids with her. And Dave went down there, a week after our son's born to go try to chop up the branches, move them to the edge of the yard, and then deal with removing all the branches and debris a week or 2 later. So I think, again, we didn't expect a tornado to hit Cape Cod. We didn't, had never dealt with the situation, and probably will never again, hopefully, knock on wood, like that again. But we try to approach it with our same formula of empathizing with the guest, trying to make it right, see what would work for them with, the loss of power we can't control. And I think, it's recommended you add a clause in your rental descriptions that say you don't reimburse for bad weather or natural disasters. And then try to communicate with her frequently. Hey, we're going to be down there on Wednesday to help move the branches aside and free up the back porch again. Hey, we're done here. We've moved everything to the edge of the yard. We only have 1/10 of an acre for that house, so it's not a very big house or yard. And just be really frequent with that communication, and keep up, just keep them up to date on what's happening when, so they're not surprised when we show up or a vendor shows up or anything. And she said she had a great time, and that they actually weren't at the house when the tornado came through. They were over in Mashpee, I think. So it all worked out, but just something that I'll never forget, given the personal hallmark moment with us. And then just one of those fluky things, natural disasters that doesn't typically occur in this part of the country.
Yeah. Yep. But like you said, there's this formula that is pretty repeatable for, being able to overcome these things. First empathizing, asking the guests, and then deploying a strategy to overcome it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, well, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. We have about.
I do want to caveat one thing.
Oh, yeah.
I counted 161 stays between our 2 properties, probably more because we've had friends and family stay that didn't book through the platforms. But these are few and far between. I think that the times, I think it's been 3 times we've had a cleaner not show up. So it's, don't let these scare you off. We just wanted this to be a really honest, ugly truth podcast about those oh shit moments, and just really, take it head on and really be transparent on how it's been for these. But we've had a lot of easy stays. We'll have, big periods of time where there's no problems or issues. And then you could have problems that both houses pop up in the same day and have to act quickly and adjust to that. So I wouldn't, even with all these things and what we've seen and experienced and learned in the last 3 years, I would not do it going back to April 2019 and say, no, I don't want to sign up for this. It's just, you learn to adapt and evolve and try to be preventative, and then try to be really responsive when these problems do come up.
And I will say, for anybody that wants to get into this industry, whether it's just so they can have a free vacation, which was really our first motivation in Cape Cod. It wasn't about making money or having a business. I had at that time 0 aspirations to be doing real estate full time, and didn't really have any aspirations. We had never talked about wanting to get a second one, or even now starting to manage other people. I'm managing other people's, but it's impossible to make progress, and it's impossible to make progress if growing a portfolio of these is your goal. You'll never get there without working through a lot of these issues. And even if your goal is to just simply have a vacation home that covers its own sort of expenses, and so you can go and enjoy it when you want to enjoy it, these things are going to pop up, and that's okay. It's really about how you approach them and what your mindset is when you are faced with them, which really is the difference between wanting to turn around and sell the home the next day, or give it away to a property manager, or succeed and have it and kind of get on with your life. So, we share these because these things do happen. We're also honest. This is not a investment strategy, so to speak, that is passive. But at the same time, I've gotten to see my 401k passively lose 20%. So, you do have a lot of control over how you manage your house and how you furnish it and how you get to enjoy it. and you have full control over how you manage these challenges. And really nothing will come to you in this industry anyways without some of these challenges, and that's okay. And there's also a lot of resources out there that are free for getting to network with other people who have had these same issues. Almost all of them are on Facebook, different Airbnb superhost Facebook groups. You do not have to be a superhost you don't even have to own an Airbnb or short-term rental to join those. But being able to bounce ideas back and forth with other people or find a mentor or somebody that's been doing this can be really helpful rather than just always trying to tackle these things head on. So with that, why don't we wrap it up? Again, this is Kim Menapace. I am Dave Menapace. This is episode 7 of the Hassle-Free RE podcast. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Apple and on Spotify or anywhere that you listen to your podcast. And it's called the Hassle-Free RE podcast. And feel free to leave some comments. If you have some questions that you'd like us to answer or other topics that you'd really like us to dive into, we could literally probably have a forever podcast on all the different topics, but we'd love to share that with you. So hopefully it makes your journey in this industry that much easier. So with that, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next episode.